Good afternoon and welcome to the February monthly webinar. My name is Mike Kramer, Calibration/Inspection Program Manager, and I am doing today's webinar on behalf of Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. And as you can see, today's topic, we're going to look at Section 8.7, which is the section for corrective action under ISO IEC 17025, the 2017 standard. Okay, as always, this webinar is being recorded. You can go back and re-listen to it if you like. Go to the link at the Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation website. Follow the, go to the tab for webinars and go to recorded webinars. We realize that we have these things scheduled out. However, not everybody can attend them during the specific time period that we allotted. Therefore, this one and the ones we've done over the last several years are available on our website. If y'all haven't been with us the last couple months, something new that we've started doing is you can type in questions directly now into your computer. You should have a box there for questions. Please keep any questions related to today's topic. And then at the end, I can go right to the questions, whereas previously we sort of had to mute for 5 minutes, have the questions submitted, and then submit it back to me. So we think this is a big improvement, so we don't have that void at the tail end of the webinar. So corrective action. So I'm going to dive right into today's subject. What is corrective action? It is an activity that shall be used to stop the reoccurrence of nonconformities. Hence, I'd like to emphasize reoccurrence. Corrective action has to be initiated when a problem exists. Remedial action can easily be confused with corrective action. Remedial action or correction is taken to rectify the mistake. Corrective action is taken to eliminate defined nonconformance, and again, highlight to prevent reoccurrence. So I like to look at the correction initially as sort of putting a band-aid on the situation. It may rectify and correct the situation at hand. However, unless you do root cause analysis, and we'll look at that a little bit deeper here, and get at the core of why it happened. The correction will not prevent it from reoccurrence. So I want to emphasize that corrective action, we're not just looking at rectifying a current situation. We're looking at, of course, rectifying the current situation, but we also want to assure that it does not happen again. So corrective action is nothing new. Those folks that are operating under the 2005 standard, making a transition to 2017, we had requirements for corrective action in 2005. The clause still there has been modified, and some for further actions have been included. You can see a couple of them right there. Is a clause of determining if similar nonconformities exist or could potentially exist. And risk. We got the risk coming into play here. That with corrective action, we need to update risk and opportunities determined during planning if necessary. 2005, it had a requirement concerning additional internal audits that has been erased. You can see that requirement there. specified under the 2005 standard, which was under 411.5, additional audits. Again, yeah, if you've been on board with us before, one word I like to use is less prescriptive. The 2017 in regards to corrective action is less prescriptive. Again, this is one area where it does not require a procedure. You can see under 411.1, that's from the 2005 standard, the laboratory shall establish a policy and procedure. We don't see that in the 2017. To kick off the requirements under 871, that when a nonconformance occurs, the laboratory shall react to the nonconformance as applicable. One thing I'd like to stress, though, if you're operating under a procedure and the procedure works, although not required, it can still be utilized. And to ensure that the requirements are being met, if you are utilizing a procedure, you're going to transition with your procedure, I would recommend revising it to reflect the requirements of the 2017 standard. Okay, so 871 kicks off with when a nonconformance occurs, the laboratory shall, of course, react to the nonconformance and, as applicable, take action to control and correct it and address the consequences. So right there, we're looking at what I was referring to as correction. We're going to take action and control. We're going to contain the immediate situation at hand. An example I give there is if you have a test report, client calls in, there's errors on the report, the correction or remedial action, corrective action would be making the required changes in the report and reissuing it. That, however, if this is, let's say, an ongoing issue, it's happened several times within a short time span, or continuously putting Band-Aids on the situation. Just reissuing the report, however, will not prevent recurrence of the nonconformities. Continuing with 871, when a nonconformity occurs, the laboratory shall evaluate the need for action and eliminate the causes of the nonconformances in order that it does not reoccur or occur elsewhere by reviewing and analyzing the nonconformance, determining the causes of the nonconformity, and determine if similar nonconformances exist or could potentially exist. So again, it was specific in the 2005 root cause. Root cause is still here. Root cause analysis, and it was specified. You can see at the bottom of the screen here, the requirement for 2005, the procedure for corrective action shall start with an investigation to determine the root causes of the problem. Still there. There may be more than one root cause, hence it could be a couple things that may have fed into the problem or the nonconformance. So looking at the example of a report, let's say we continuously been revising reports. This is becoming a frequent situation. In the report reissue example, we may need to go a little further to prevent us from having to reissue a report. May look further into the review and authorization process of reports and look for the root cause of this issue as to why are we having to reissue reports because of errors that we are producing on the test reports that we're issuing to our customers. So as depicted here on the screen, we have to dig down a little bit deeper, as far as what it's referring to here as a to eliminate the causes. To further depict the situation, have a graphic there. So, of course, with corrective action, the causes need to be evaluated. Cause analysis is an important and most difficult step in the process. Any type of mistake in this step may cause the implementation of the wrong corrective action, and it does not reoccur. Avoid the reoccurrence of a nonconformance. Sort of like a weed growing there. You have a weed in your yard, you see the symptoms of the issue right there, which is a weed growing. Of course, pull that weed out. However, that's not going to prevent it from happening again. Sort of like the root cause, it's below the surface, it's not obvious. We come out a week later, that weed is right back there. We can yank it up again. That's not going to stop the reoccurrence. We need to look at the underlying causes, as illustrated in this example, get to the roots of the situation. Since we dig up the roots, next time around, the likelihood of reoccurrence would be greatly diminished. Okay, still under 871C. When a nonconformist occurs, the laboratory shall implement any actions needed. It's great we have do a terrific root cause analysis. We get at the core of the situation. We take correction. Then we take corrective actions, the necessary conditions for corrective action. But the plan in action should be clearly defined. Laboratory management should be confident about the effectiveness and the performance of the corrective action. When a nonconformist occurs, the laboratory shall review the effectiveness of any corrective action. This is nothing new in 2005, 2017. Always been required once you take corrective action. Doesn't stop there. You need to assure that the corrective action has been effective. The results of the corrective action shall be recorded in monitors for determining the effectiveness of the corrective action. Monitors should verify the successful completion of the identified action and assess the effectiveness of the actions taken. In other words, and what I like to tell folks, that I've reviewed many corrective action reports, and I see all the requirements captured, including a sign-off and the determination of the effectiveness of the corrective action. I've seen them sign off on the same day that the corrective action was implemented. You really don't have a feel for whether or not it's going to be effective unless you have some time passed. Let's say in the report example, for example, we go down to the roots and we decided to put another set of eyes on reports before we issue them out to customers. So 2 months passed and we have not gotten any cause to reissue reports because of errors that were made before. I would say that would be monitoring the situation would be sufficient time, and the events not be reoccurring would be a determining factor in putting that extra set of eyes on the reports in this example and preventing the reoccurrence of having reports go out with errors. When a nonconformity occurs, a laboratory shall, and this is a new requirement, update risk and opportunities determined during planning if necessary. So we have an if necessary there. Right in the introduction of the 2017 standard, and we have a new section on risk. The 2017 standard requires a laboratory to plan and implement actions to address risk and opportunities. Addressing both risk and opportunities established a basis for increasing the effectiveness of the management system, achieving improved results, and preventing negative effects. So we got this risk-based thinking. So this is should also be incorporated into the corrective action process. I would recommend lab should incorporate it by asking itself during the implementation of any corrective action, are there any risk or opportunities that are going to be presented here? It may be, it may not. The opportunities, perhaps the corrective action could be implemented in other areas of the laboratory. Still under 8.7.1F, when a nonconformance occurs, the laboratory shall make changes to the management system if necessary. Again, whether or not you're on the left-hand side, you've done away with the quality manual, you're operating purely through an electronic quality management system, or if you're sticking to the documentation here on the right with a quality manual as your top tier document. These are living documents, living meetings that they change to reflect laboratory true operating protocol. Hence, if a corrective action requires a change, that change should be implemented within the quality management system, whether electronic or standard documented with tier documents as appeared to the right. Should reflect what is actually being done in the laboratory, regardless of whether it's a corrective action or anything new that's implemented. Your quality management system needs to be revised to show the new protocol, which in this case may have been established due to a corrective action that was taken. This was always in the 2005 standard. You can see what the requirements there. Corrective action shall be appropriate to the effect of the nonconformance encountered. So what does that mean? Basically, what we're looking at there is the end results. Did the nonconformity have a direct impact or impacted what the laboratory was reporting to the clients? So if it related directly to the test or calibration results, the corrective action taken shall be appropriate to the effects of the nonconformance encountered, i.e., I say the nonconformance may have been a cause for the institution of nonconforming work, which we did a webinar on that, which will take it as far as recalling work that was already distributed to the clients. A7.3, nothing new here. The laboratory shall retain records as evidence of the nature of the nonconformance, causes, and any subsequent action taken. And the record shall also have evidence of the results of any corrective action. I.e., typically I'll see that in the form of a corrective action report. We report the we have a nonconformance. We showing the root cause or the causes of the situation. We're addressing any risk or opportunities, see if there's any other potential nonconformances within the organization. We take the corrective action. That's hopefully would get at the root cause that's been identified. And then last but not least, we want to see the results, make sure that it was monitored and determined to be effective or it may be ineffective. Records, just as in 2005, still have to produce a record of the corrective action. Okay, that's pretty much it for the requirements. You've heard me mention the call. I still refer to it as root cause quite often, just so used to saying that instead of just cause or causes. root cause, and as an assessor, and with PJ, I'm speaking on behalf of Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. If we're doing an assessment, and we have a nonconformist as part of the standard, that's we have written a nonconformist. We want to see that it was corrected, and we want to see that it does not appear again. Hence, so we require that record, that corrective action, say report that the lab may have. And I always like to pay particularly attention to that root cause. I could find an instance during an assessment. I've actually seen root causes that says found during PJLA assessment. That does not, that's not even put a Band-Aid on a situation. And I really believe if an organization takes to heart the root cause when a nonconformance does occur, if you take to heart the root cause process, let's dig down deep. Let's see why this occurred, and let's take the action to prevent reoccurrence. I think it's going to create a lot less problems down the road. At PJLA, if we come back the following year, that nonconformance, if it's a repeat, maybe for a minor, repeat may institute a major nonconformance. So there's a whole lot of information out there on root cause analysis. There's folks that's written books about it. There's many methods that organizations can use to look at root cause analysis, to address problems, to address nonconformances. See several of them listed here on the screen. We'll take a look at a few of them here. One well-known is called a fishbone or Ishikawa, or cause and effect diagrams. This will basically group causes into categories. This may include things like people, measurements, methods, materials, environment, and machines. The fishbone diagrams, forces you to consider all possible causes of a problem instead of focusing on the most obvious one. Here, causes are grouped into several categories to identify the correct source of the variation. So here's a simplified diagram here. We have a problem. We have all these things here that we fed into the problem, and we're going to basically look at each one of these, determining whether or not there's a cause within each of these groups or categories. Categories, they can be very broad, things like people, environment. After grouping, we can break these down even into smaller parts. For example, people might want to consider potential cause factors such as leadership, staffing, or training. As we dig deeper into potential causes and sub-causes, questioning each branch, we get closer to the sources of the issue. We can use this method to eliminate unrelated categories and identify correlated factors and likely root causes. For the sake of simplicity, carefully consider the categories before creating a diagram. So here I list common categories that could be considered into a fishbone diagram. These may be applicable to your situation, may not. Machines, methods, materials, man, mind, power, measurement, mission, management, maintenance, products, price, promotion, people, physical evidence, performance, surroundings, suppliers, skills. Again, as we dig deeper into the potential causes and sub-causes, questioning each branch as we get closer to the sources of the issue, we can use this method to eliminate unrelated causes and identify correlated factors and likely root causes. Another method that could be utilized is simple brainstorming. We hear that term a lot, come up often with, we want to come up with an ideal. A group of people get together and brainstorm it. process. This can be used very effectively in determining a root cause of a problem or a nonconformance. The brainstorming process brings together a group of people to discuss the issue. In a question, in a facilitated environment, the basic premise is that a group of people working collectively to find a solution is more productive and innovative than if each person tried to come up with a solution individually. So basic steps in implementing the brainstorming process includes scheduling a meeting, informing the participants of the topics to be discussed, assigning a specific person in the meeting who will write down people's thoughts, with all participants having equal opportunity to participate. The resulting discussion hopefully should identify the root cause of the problem and try to resolve them. So the person, we have a person here that we're going to elect to facilitate the meeting. Person has two roles. First, to assure that the steps we just went through are properly executed. And secondly, help assure that discussion stays on the topic, stays on track in regards to finding the root cause of the problem that you're trying to solve, or the nonconformist that you're trying to prevent reoccurrence. In addition, another perk that you may think about with the brainstorming approach, to all the great ideas you can get from brainstorming session, it can also benefit you in regards to company politics. This is the case because the people involved in the brainstorming session will be more likely to support the resultant actions items because they were involved in the process that created the solution. Remember this point when trying to decide who to invite to a meeting, say a brainstorming session. After all, the people who are not part of the solution may in turn become part of the problem. Lastly, a popular one I see implemented quite often is the 5 whys approach, getting at the root cause. It's one of the more common techniques of performing the root cause analysis. It's the 5 whys. You may also think of this as the annoying toddler approach. Or to picture, the toddler constantly asking to each response you've given, why? For every answer to a why question, in regards to a root cause analysis, follow up with a deeper, okay, why question. 5 is the arbitrary figure that this approach takes into account. By the time you get to the 5th why, chances are you're going to hit the root cause. And you'll reach a point where when asking why anymore will not provide any more useful information. So the 5 whys actually was developed and fine-tuned within the Toyota Motor Corporation as a critical component of its problem-solving training. Toyota encouraged teams to dig into each problem that arose until they found the root cause. I have an example here. And 5 whys being utilized. A robot stopped working. Why did the robot stop? The circuit has been overloaded, causing a fuse to blow. Stop right there. Change the fuse. Have it working for a limited time, and it may just stop working again. We ask again. Okay. Why is the circuit overloaded? There was insufficient lubricant on the bearings, so they locked up. We'll take it a little further. We could add some more lubricant there, but that's not going to prevent it from happening again. Why was there insufficient lubricant on the bearings? The oil pump on the robot is not circulating sufficient oil. Why is the pump not circulating sufficient oil? The pump's intake is clogged with metal shavings. Get to the fifth why here. Why is the intake clogged with metal shavings? Because there is no filter on the pump. Hence, stopped here, asking why any further is not going to provide any meaningful results. So instead of stopping at the first one, where we simply change the fuse, we utilized Toyota in this example, utilized the 5 whys, and came up with, I would say, putting a filter to prevent this situation happening again and causing this robot to stop functioning. I got one more here. Say an employee fell, was injured during first shift startup. So the first question is, why did Mr. Smith fall and was injured during the first shift? We could, of course, we're going to correct this. I'm sure pick him up, clean up the place where the employee fell. Of course, that's correction. So we want to take corrective action. We don't want this happen again. So why did he fall? There was an oil spill on the floor in the machining department. Why? It was determined that a seal in machine 2 deteriorated and began cracking and leaked oil. Why? The seal material was not robust to the application. Well, why not? Because we went to the lower cost seals purchased from the new supplier. Well, why did we do that? Because there was no seal material specified in service manuals. Hence, we stopped here. So in this particular situation, getting to the root cause, and we dug down far on here, basically specifying any sort of grade or robustness of a seal in the service manuals, and assure when that's ordered that those criteria is being met from our vendors. Hopefully, ideally, the situation of having someone slip, fall, and hurt themselves by not just mopping it up, but digging down to the root cause, taking corrective action, and addressing the root cause will prevent that from happening again. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of today's topic. So just bear with me a minute. Okay, I'm reading these just as they came through. Is there any differences within the 2005 version? There is. We went over that at the beginning. We bring risk into it. We bring, of course, we are determining if there was any additional non-conform, could have been any additional non-conformances. That's magnified. We also went over the fact that 2005 required a procedure, and 2017 does not. So there are some differences within the two standards. Like I said, we're talking about if you have a procedure, you can still utilize the procedure, but I would recommend revising that procedure to address the additional requirements in 2005. Big one being, you got to update risk and opportunity, any risk and opportunities. You should always, ask yourself that question. This next one question with the 2005 version, do you have a table that lists matrix to direct comparison issues line by line? Don't recall if we have one at PGLA. We do have resources on our website. One resource that I'm not sure if it does it line by line. If you go up to our forms, there's one that says checklists. So as in 2005, in our assessor, we have a working document that we utilize. We have the same one up there in 2017. I believe it's in differences. It's in Excel format. There's a tab within that form. Basically, it's a cross-reference between the 2005, 2017 standard. It sort of cross-references the two. And then if there are any differences or if there's anything new, it highlights that. So you may want to take a look at that. Yeah, this next one's very broad. It's talking about the 871E update risk and opportunity. Let me see. And again, that says if necessary. So we have the if necessary tagged on to that requirement. During planning, meaning what is this case? Can you please elaborate? There's a new requirement. Just basically what I'm stating here is during your corrective action protocol that you ask yourself, are there any risk or opportunities? Then there's another whole requirement for risk within the 2017. If you have established a protocol for looking at risk, eliminating risk, lowering risk, that you follow it. Can share what way to show the corrective action is effective and can close with confidence. Are there timelines for this CA? There is no timeline specified. I basically said in my presentation, you need to let some time go by. What can you use to determine if it's been effective? Well, has it happened again? That's the first thing that comes to mind. I gave the example of test reports coming back with errors on them. We've been doing correction on them, reissuing them. Let's say we decided to look at our review and authorization procedure. We modified it. We put another set of eyes on this before it went to the customers. May establish a checklist, whatever we put in place for the reviewer to double check, make sure these things are captured on the report. Say we implemented that. We don't want a day to go by and then say it was effective. We want to monitor it, I would say, and I'm just throwing out an arbitrary number. Let's say we've been getting 3 or 4 reissued reports on an average, and we started implementing this new corrective action. Then we get, let's say, maybe 0, hopefully. In that case, I would say that would be sufficient to saying that it was effective. So it just pretty much, I would say, depend on the situation. One thing that we look at PJLA when we do assessments, one thing we look at is we go back and revisit the nonconformities, if there was any, from the previous assessment. I would definitely say if maybe during the management review, for example, that's a line item is corrective action. Correlating that between the time, that the corrective action was implemented, that may be a good time to go back, look at it. You've done it, management review. You're going to go back. We're going to look at it and say it was, if it was effective or if not. That's just a thought on my behalf. That's not required. There is no requirement, no time frame set in 17025. Just says you need to assure that the corrective action taken was effective. I got another question here about, how can you assure that the corrective action was effective and closed with confidence? Like I said, let some time pass. Maybe look at it. You're going to be looking at it 2 other times. I always say also with an internal audit, you're going to do internal audits. You're going to look at, you may have heard me stress objective evidence. So it could be something that could also be incorporated with the internal audit, going back, seeing if the corrective action was taken and if it's been determined that it was effective. And of course, a line item for the management review would be two times during 17025 quality management system requirements, other than having it in place. You're going to go back and look at corrective action anyway. What other tools besides those on webinar can you recommend to help lab? And I'm reading this right as I'm seeing these on my screen. To more effective and productive gain. There's and I know at PJLA, visit our website. I know we're doing a transition. I don't know if the date's been set, but very soon we're doing live training that we offer at PJLA. Again, I'm speaking on behalf of Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. We do the monthly webinars. We also provide live training. We do a transition training. Actually, we just had one this week where we provide a transition course. It's 1 day, group activities, case studies, where we look at the key differences between the 2005-2017 standard. This one here, I'm going to read it as I see it. What do you recommend in a situation where the root cause is an individual and they do not follow through with the preventive action? And quite often I'll see it's lack of training we get to as a root cause, an individual, say that fishbone diagram leading into it, training. Often I see that, and I believe I've researched, seen it documented, that often is the top reason for a root cause. Again, if it's a reoccurring issue, then I would recommend that other than taking a correction, if it's an individual, take it deeper. I.e., consequences. Somebody's been informed of a procedure that needs to be implemented. If I'm reading this question correctly, and they're not doing it, then you have a personnel issue. So I would say that would be a case by case sort of situation. May require additional training. That's the lab's call on that. But if it's an individual just not following through, we did have one example on here is involvement. We talked about the brainstorming session, and I did mention during there, if folks are involved in the process, they're more likely to have, I would say, feel ownership in it and want to see it implemented if they had actual input into the corrective action and looking at the root cause that came up. When should the activity come first on the sequence, internal audit and management review meeting? Well, ideally the internal audit is hope I'm answering this question correctly. What you're asking me, what should come first, the internal audit or the management review? The internal audit should come first because the management review takes into account the internal audit. So with the internal audit, you're going to audit that section on on corrective action. You should be auditing your quality management systems and the requirements that you set forth, and also the requirements of 17025. Hence, you're going to be looking at internal audits there. You're going to be looking at all those requirements that we just went through, hopefully looking at real live animals, objective evidence of ones that's been produced, and ensure that the protocol has been followed and the requirements are met. Hence, during the management review, you're going to go back and you're going to look at that corrective actions. How many were there? I mean, what corrective action has been taken. And I would say last but not least with corrective action, you want to make sure they've been monitored, and have they been closed? Have they been determined to be effective? Can you share your training case study for us to learn in the process? Thank you. I think if you're asking me here, I gave a couple examples. Again, I hope I'm answering the correct question correctly. If you would like a sample, this particular presentation, as mentioned before, we have it available on our website under webinars, recorded webinars. Not just this one, but it goes back several years. If you would like a copy of it without the recording, I'll be more than happy to send that to you. Give you my email address, which is mkramer, Kramer, at PJ Labs, that's plural, and Kramer is spelled with a K, Kramer, at pjlabs.com. I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of the slides. Again, the recorded version are up on our website. So you can always go back and re-listen to this if you have a colleague that may have missed it, or like I said at the beginning here, sometimes at times we have this is not convenient. Great part about doing this is it's not a one-time thing. You can go back and you can re-listen to any of our webinars. Just fishing through the last few questions here. This next one, and I'm a calibration person, calibration program manager. I'm not a testing, so there's a wide variety of testing that we do, and even calibrations that I'm not versed in individually. So this one is a specific example, and I'll throw it out there. You all can think in your heads, if you're familiar with this, whether or not you would consider this as a root cause and corrective action. The poor recoveries of a certified reference material on the LCMS would changing the columns and cleaning the mass spectrometer suffice as a kappa, assuming sample extradition preparation a constant and can't be changed. Like I said, I'm not versed in the method or know what particular method you're talking about here. However, I would say ideally you want to do a root cause analysis, however you elect to do it. 5 whys, fishbone diagram, brainstorming. If you come up with that as the way to prevent it from reoccurring, and if you're utilizing the 5 whys, you stop there, then I would say, yes, that would be sufficient. I have an individual here that says they sent me several emails, did not get any responses. Please check. If you're responding, and if it's in regards to this webinar, and I have not responded back, then I have not gotten it. Again, M. Kramer, Kramer, at pjlabs.com. Can you review the difference between correction and corrective action? Correction, and I gave the correlation of a Band-Aid. It's fixing the situation at hand. We went over the report situation. Customer calls, there's an error on their report. Of course, we're going to take correction. We're going to update, revise, amend the report, fix that. Corrective action is we want to assure that this is not going to happen again. With the report example that we went over, this is a reoccurring issue. So we dug a little bit deeper here. We took corrective action. We before we released any reports, for example, we decided to put another set of eyes on it, have a clear checklist of common reasons why reports were coming back, for example, and assuring that putting the other set of eyes on it, assuring that we're not missing anything, would make the likelihood of having to redo reports less likely than just basically correcting the report for the situation at hand and sending a new report. The gentleman that fell, I gave that example with the 5 whys. Sort of a correction would be, yeah, we're going to mop it up. We're going to clean the area. That's the correction. Nobody's going to fall on that. Corrective action, we did the root cause. We don't want that to happen again. Hence, in that particular case, we went all the way to the seals from the machine that was leaking and determined that was insufficient material causing this leak to happen. Could you show us the form you should use for doing corrective action? There is no specific requirements. That's up to the lab individually. I would say in order to assure, and I sort of went through this with a procedure, if you're using a procedure or if you're using an interactive process, go through those requirements and make sure that you're capturing them. Be it on a form or some sort of interactive process. There is no specific form that you have to use. Tailor to your needs, and assure that you're going to be catching all those requirements that we just went through with it. So a correction requires a corrective action always. Not always. Again, we're resorting to the report. Let's say you had one report call in 3 months. You amended the report and then you did it, resent the report, and it hadn't happened again for a year. The correction of sending out that report may be sufficient. Sort of like stress, this is an ongoing thing. We've been getting a lot of calls having to replace reports. And in that case, then I would say corrective action would be needed. I hope I answered yeah, not always. You have to look at it to determine the magnitude of the issue at hand, the problem, the non-conformance. Was it and basically you want to look at did it have any impact on the bottom line, the test results or calibration results that you're producing, and if so, you definitely want to not just correct it, you want to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Okay, it looks like that's all I have. That was a lot of questions there. I hope I answered the question to your satisfaction. Some of them, it's kind of ambiguous and broad as to what was asking. Again, if I was not clear or if I was totally off track with what you're asking, mkramer@pjlabs.com. One person, I believe, was asking about a presentation, which would be, if you want a copy of this presentation without the recording, mkramer, that's Mike, and then Kramer @pjlabs.com. So before we sign off here, just want to, we already have scheduled our next webinar, which is will be March 28th. Hopefully things are warming up a little bit by then. We are going to look at what's always requirements. It's got its own section now in 2017. Going to look at metrological traceability to include the requirements of the 2017 standards. And we're also going to look at those requirements specified in PL2, which is PJLA's policy on measurement traceability. Thank you all for logging in, and look forward to presenting and having you all with us next month, March 28th. Enjoy the rest of your day.